Hello, welcome to Strangers Stopping Strangers, podcast number 13. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome back to anyone who's returning, and a thank you for stopping in to anyone who's new this week. So today's guest is Juliet Barr, and I really enjoyed talking to her. So much fun. She and I met first on Twitter, then Instagram and Facebook. We've had some near meets over the summer, both coming from the Northeast and checking out the music that's been happening locally, and feel pretty confident we'll meet in person sometime this fall. So she has some just so cool stories. They go back to her childhood and getting into the Grateful Dead in the 1970s all the way through to today. So I really enjoyed hearing it, and I'm sure that you will too. Please feel free to send me an email, comment, any suggestions, and thank you for tuning in, and enjoy the podcast. So welcome, Juliet. Thank you so much for joining Strangers Stopping Strangers.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm psyched to do it.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited. As well, we had been in touch, and the first guest was a woman, was a really close friend of mine, and there's so many amazing women that are deadheads and part of the community, but yet I haven't talked to one of them on the podcast. So I'm so excited to have a female perspective and voice with your stories.
Well, so let's get into it.
Get into it. So tell me, getting on the bus. Tell me the early days. How what got you into this crazy world?
I've always been a music fan. As long as I can remember, when I was a very little girl, when I turned 5, my parents gave me a record player and 2 45s. One was the Beatles and one was the Beach Boys. And that was my start. I would sit down on the floor and just play them over and over until they they couldn't take it anymore, and they added to my little collection. And so I've got some really great little classic 45s from the 60s. And I remember even then just being taken away with the harmonies and the melody and listening to them, and the B-sides too. And so even back then, my house was always filled with music. My father's very musical, and he played all kinds of music, jazz and folk and early rock and roll. And so it was always a thing for me to listen to music, and music was my getaway, and music was my favorite thing to do after school, and it's what I would spend my allowance on, was going to buy new records. And then as I got a little older, I would go to see live music, and starting as early as 14, I was going to see concerts. I wasn't the Dead yet, but it was pretty much whatever. I grew up. Didn't always live in New Jersey. By the time I was of concert seeing age, I lived in New Jersey, so getting on the bus and going to see concerts at Madison Square Garden was just what we did. And so it was, Beach Boys, Billy Joel, Elton John, David Bowie, Fleetwood Mac.
Wow. Right.
Whatever was popular, we would get tickets. You'd have to go to a record store and buy them. You couldn't just sit. Well, there were no computers, so that was not an option.
Oh. Warehouse records, Tower Records, they would announce the day. Everyone would get in line and get in line the night before. And
get in line. I was not allowed to do anything crazy like go the day before and get tickets. But it seemed like then and now I was the ticket getter. And I had a group of friends, and we would go to music, and Paul McCartney, The Who, Steve Miller Band. I would see music, and it was the thing that made me feel excitement and joy, and so that was always my thing. And then I got to college, and I went to college in Boston, so I could easily keep doing that thing. So then as I had heard of the Grateful Dead in high school, but that wasn't my group of friends, and that wasn't I guess now knowing Grateful Dead history, the Dead did play when I was in high school, so there would have been an opportunity, but it wasn't something I went to see. When I got to college, it's almost like a scene out of that. There's a famous scene out of Freaks and Geeks where this girl gets turned on to the Dead because they play her American Beauty, and that's exactly what happened to me. I lived on a freshman dorm, and I went downstairs. I was hanging out with some guys in their room, and one of the guys, this real cute guy who happens to now be my husband, put on American Beauty, and song after song, I was like, what is this? And
wow.
I just remember Sugar Magnolia just was like, huh. And by the time we got to Sunshine Daydream, I was hooked.
There you go.
So that's by '78. I went to my first concert. By then that cute boy was my boyfriend, and his brother drove down from Maine, which is where they lived, and they picked me up. And of course, I was the one who got the tickets because I'm the ticket getter.
You're the ticket girl, right?
I'm the ticket getter, and they picked us up in Boston, scooped us up, drove us all the way down to New Jersey, and we saw the Dead in East Rutherford, aka the Meadowlands, and saw my first show. My cute boyfriend and his cute brother and his cute friend, and I was a pretty happy camper.
Yeah.
That was so it was got turned on to the Dead in '77, which was a great year, and saw my first show in '78.
So the show you picked to talk about, I want to hear about, is how you found yourself up in Lewiston, Maine, because that is the song we selected.
Okay, so the first concert I picked out was probably, I went to a lot of shows then between 78 and 80, which is the show I picked out. And I picked this 1980 show because it was a really special show. And also, you can get a lot of these shows in that era because they've all been released as either Dick's Picks or Dave's Picks. But this one, this Lewiston show, it was at the Lewiston Fairgrounds. And so this boyfriend of mine was from Lewiston. So this was pretty amazing, is that my boyfriend and, and a bunch of his friends who I now know, including Dave Davis, who you have already interviewed, all these guys are from this town, Lewiston, Maine, and the Grateful Dead are coming to Lewiston.
And it's a small town.
It's a pretty small town. They did have, they did have their own high school, whereas my high school was 3 towns, but still, it's a small town. And the Dead are coming there, so we all, it's the beginning of the school year, 1980, college school year, and we all go up and saw a ton of our college friends, and also all my husband's high school friends, and this is, we get there, and it's this giant open field, very, very dusty, with a giant row of porta-johns around the back and a stage in front, and it is just a festival atmosphere. And from the very first notes to the very last notes, this is a spectacular concert. And I think most people who were there agree that it's I think people just know that this was a very special event to have been at, and I'm not sure why it hasn't been released. I think they say it's because they can't find a good enough version, but I think I think the version that you're going to play now is quite excellent, and there are quite a few highlights. I remember Shakedown was, believe it or not, Shakedown was kind of a new song. And when they opened the second set with Shakedown, I just remember people just cartwheeling and dancing across the field, and the sun was just starting to go down, and it was just a jubilant situation. But I think we're going to play right now, I Know You Rider, coming out of China Cat. And this is when I realized, wow, Jerry was just singing his heart out. And when he sang I Wish I Were a Headlight, I just knew, wow, Jerry, it just was, right. He was singing it to all of us. And whenever I hear that now sung by anyone, I think, that's Jerry's verse.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I just got chills hearing you tell the story. I mean, it's like, it transcends this, it transcends your life, and you have those moments and you bring them on, and they enter all the different, different times that you're with, and you go back to them, and like they're singing to you, and it's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, I really recommend anyone who's listening to this, go find, you can find it on archive.org, and just play the whole show, and just start to finish, just listen to the whole thing. Just listen to this taste of it, just to whet your appetite. But don't pick and choose. Play the whole show. It's really it's a very special show.
Well, that is phenomenal. So let's go into some tunes, because now I know that everyone's going to be itching to hear it and want to they want to tap into the vibe. So I am going to play I Know You Rider, coming out of China Cat Sunflower, and this is in Lewiston, Maine, and remind me of the date. It is the
September 6th, 1980.
September 6th, 1980. So early fall day, back to school, sunny and fall on the way, and awesome, beautiful. All right, well let's play that, and then we will come back and talk about the next leg of your journey.
Very good.
awesome listening to I Know You Rider. Welcome back, everyone. And we are going to go a little further along to post-1980. We have a lot of ground to talk about, but there's so much. There's still a long ways in 1980, but let's skip down. Let's pass through and skip on to the mid 90s. Where were you at? So the boyfriend becomes your husband. We're following a love story as well that started in a college dorm at American Beauty. So the love story has gone on, and now we're in the mid 90s. And tell me where you're at now.
So we stayed together, and we moved around. We moved to North Carolina, and then got married in '87. And my husband now is in business school, and we decide that the only place we really can live is going to be San Francisco. Why? Well, because that's where the Dead are. And so I had been in grad school. He was in grad school, and we both know that we can get jobs anywhere, and San Francisco is where it has to be. So his job first takes him to Portland, Oregon. We're seeing a lot of music up in Portland. It was fantastic, and they immediately transfer him right where they promised, which is San Francisco. And this brings us to the late 80s, early 90s, and we're seeing the Grateful Dead all the time. We're seeing Jerry shows. Yeah.
You and I are at the same shows at this point. Actually, Michael, my last week's podcast, and Andy, and I mean, I just love how the world we're meeting each other now in like the strangest of places, on the internet, and we can have a whole sidebar conversation because that's when I jumped into the scene. So Shoreline and Greek and Cost and Cal Expo and yes.
Right. So actually, I think I misspoke. I said we got married in '87. We actually got married in '84. We had our first kid in '87. So we're now on the West Coast in '87, and all through the '80s and '90s, we're seeing the Dead. We had.
Where are you living? Are you in San Francisco, or where are you living?
We're actually living in Burlingame. And
really?
Yep. And we are basically seeing mostly the Grateful Dead, but seeing really all kinds of great music out there. It was fantastic. We saw. I don't even know how many hundreds of shows. So it was all we hoped it would be, and then life brought us back east, and now it is 88 or 89, I think it is, and we're still cruising along, and we're seeing shows now. By 90, we have our next child, and so we're toning it down a little bit. We're both both working hard with our two kids. I'll take a sidebar here to say that in '91 I was diagnosed with lymphoma, and that was of course a really difficult time. And I still to this day will say that the Grateful Dead and their music, and even seeing concerts during that time, really got me through what was a very, very rough time, having two little babies at home and having this terrible diagnosis. The music and the vibes of the community and the strength of that energy was absolutely purifying and good for the soul. And I did get through it. And by 92, I had a clean bill of health. So that's, good positive vibe. Yeah. And then in 94, amazingly, I had my third child. So that was a real fantastic miracle. And then, of course, the world knows what happened in August of 95 is we lost Jerry. And I don't really know what more to say about that. I know where I was. I guess everybody who was alive then knows where they were. It came
Where were
home.
you?
Well, I was sitting at I was the director of Hebrew High School here in New Jersey, and my secretary was not working that day, but she called me, and she told me, and so I didn't believe her because that was impossible. And when it finally sunk in that it was true, I left work and just came home and picked up my kids, did what I had to do in some sort of numbness, and when we finally put the kids to bed, and my husband and I just must have probably had some tequila out on the back deck and listened to music all night, looking at the stars and wondering if our lives were going to change forever.
Hey.
And I think we thought our lives would change forever in that beginning stage. As I'm sure probably most Deadheads did think at that time. We just stood outside and cried because it was the end of everything we had known since, well, for my husband since 77, and for me since 78, I suppose, or 77 as well. So Bob, had already been touring with Rat Dog, and I understand, and I remember even at the time that for him the show still went on. He still played even, I think, the next night, and I don't remember how I felt about that at the time. I think looking back, I know now that he had to do it because he probably also didn't know what to do with himself. And later that year, we got ourselves a dog, of course, named him Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing we didn't have any more kids because
it would have been Jerry.
Yeah.
It would have been a Jerry in the family. That would have been nice.
We certainly would have, and I'm not sure what my family would have had to say about that. But the music did go on, and we there was first there was the Dead, and there was the other ones, and we kept seeing our music. It was our music, and I know a lot of people said, well, once Jerry died, there was no more, music for me. I couldn't see them anymore. But that wasn't it for me. I have, it's always been for me, and it always, as long as they'll keep playing, I'll keep seeing them. It's everywhere we've lived, in all the places that I've mentioned, North Carolina or Portland, Oregon, or especially San Francisco, and certainly now back in New Jersey, the Deadhead community has been that kind community that I look for, that, I feel myself in, that I feel no judgment in, that I know I can speak that same language. And it was always there then, and it's still there now. And we find each other, and we find ourselves there. And I think even when Jerry was alive, he was a reluctant leader. I think what I'm looking at now is that Bob has sort of become maybe less of a reluctant leader. Bob sort of has taken on some sort of a leadership role and looks the part as well. And I think it's up to all Deadheads to be leaders and be part of this community of kind people who think about the earth and think about the future. And it's not just about the music, but it's also having the music live on in the younger generations.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. When I saw the Dead Company play North Carolina, and instead of an encore, Bob did the Get Out and Vote, and it was the first show of the tour. And I'll be totally honest here on the podcast, I was kind of bummed to not get an encore. I think it was the first Dead show I ever went to, and the show was amazing, and the set finished it was so good, and he came back. And the thing about this community is so unbelievable is, they did the vote. He took the leadership role. It was, things are going on, and he, and truly get what he did and understand it and admire it. But as a listener, as a concert goer, I was like, yeah, what the fuck? There's no encore, you know?
Right.
So we walk out together, my girlfriend and I, and nobody complains. It never comes up. I don't see it on message boards. No one's complaining. And I'm like, leave it to the Deadhead community to not even mention that there isn't an encore. Like, it's just such a positive. We're so grateful for what we got crew that, I mean, what other group would walk out without there being some sort of something,
right.
you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's not in the nature of the people. And then because other people aren't doing it, you don't want to be the one complaining, you know, like I'm not going to be
right.
the one in the parking lot that's going to open up the Pandora's box of complaints, you know. So,
right.
I mean, yeah,
right.
I'm mentioning it now, but whatever. I mean, it was still an amazing experience. And anyone out there that was at North Carolina, I'm sure you probably had that twinge of, that's it. But, you know, whatever, they come back and they play and he's a leader and I get it. And again, just too nice of a group to even ruin the evening about complaining about something like no encore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he did the same thing at when I watched, I wasn't at Bonnaroo, but I watched the simulcast at Bonnaroo. He talked about voting. And as a matter of fact, I think he did that. He's done it at a few shows, and I think that's something they never used to do, which is, well, I shouldn't say that, actually. They're the ones who even taught me about the rainforest when they did the rainforest benefit in Madison Square Garden. So I shouldn't say that. But the fact that they're trying to get people aware and registering to vote, and not only just to register to vote, but to vote. And, you know, I think that's good. That they have a whole group of younger listeners who have never voted, and it's important. So it's
very. No, I completely agree.
I think it's good.
Important. No, I totally agree. And then the next show at Saratoga Springs, they did a double encore, and then once again, life just balanced itself out, right?
Right.
Like, all right, and I'm now officially over not getting my encore last show. I got two, so it all balanced out in the end.
Right, it all balances out, exactly.
It all balanced out at the end. But no, the fact that they're using the platform and the participation row and the people and the young, no, it's amazing. I mean, it's important. It's very important.
That's right.
I totally agree. So the next song, so tell me a little bit about the show. We're going to play some more music. So the next show is incarnation of the band Furthur. So tell me a little bit why we picked up.
So I mean, once my kids were old enough and I could really just dive into following the Dead around a little bit, I took full advantage of that. And that's how I really enjoyed spending my summer, which is on tour. And in 2013, my husband and I had a fabulous summer of following Furthur around a little bit. And another concert that I think is not very well known and certainly underrated, and I recommend it to anyone who will listen, is when Furthur played at Doubleday Field in Cooperstown on July 14th, 2013. This is, again, I will say to anyone who's listening, just play the whole show. It's filled with gems and surprises. John Kay, I think, is just spectacular. Clementi is just great. You know, I got to meet Sunshine because she was just walking through the crowd, and I also got to meet someone who is now one of my best friends, and we'll talk, I think in the next segment, we'll talk about social media, but someone who I had never met, as you say, strangers stopping strangers, someone who I had never met. We met there in one of the parking lots, and at the little shakedown that they had, and he and I are now, I would say, best friends. And this was just a stellar show, start to finish. It rained. There was a rainbow. They sold, $5 beers and hot dogs. It was actually on Doubleday Field, and Furthur was they were just alive. They were happy to be there. They had gone to the Baseball Hall of Fame the day before, and they played two songs that, one song, Gloria, which they had rarely played. I think I could be wrong, and I should have looked this up before we talked, but I think they'd only played it once or twice ever. And they played another song, which I'm not going to give away. I would like listeners to just go play it. They played one song they had never played before in honor of being in this famous place. And I really look at this as also one of my favorite shows ever of all time, and one of my favorite days, too. It was really special. So we're going to hear Gloria, and it's really a treat. I think listeners are really going to get a kick out of it, especially if you're a Bobby fan, like I am.
Absolutely. Well, let's roll into Gloria, and then we're gonna come back and talk about what's happening now. So,
okay.
All right. So everybody enjoy some Gloria, and this is coming to us from Furthur at Doubleday in Cooperstown, and this was on, is it July 13th?
No, July 14th, 2013.
July 14th, 2013. So hot summer day, upstate New York, July 14th, 2013. Enjoy.
About my baby, you know when she come around, well, just about 5 foot tall. Oh, my hell, just come around here, she about midnight. Oh, you know she gonna make me feel so good. My house, knock upon my door, knock upon my door, knock upon my door, knock upon my door, yeah, and then she come on inside. Come on inside now. Get done with that. Done a little more channels, sir. All up on a ball game. And I'm thinking that's kind of appropriate. When she arrives, we're already on first base. We get talking now, and I sit down on the couch. I'm thinking about Steven doing second base now. Yes, Steven second. Yes, Steven second. Yeah, that's it. And I can't help thinking about center field now. Thinking about center field. Grass is always green around, and that's what they say. So I'm thinking center field seems just fine. Seems just okay. So I'm winding up now, here on the pitch. Winding up now, here comes the pitch. Right down the middle. Yeah, right down the middle. My little catcher wants it low and inside. Talking low and inside. Yeah, low and inside. You might imagine we made it to third base. This boy wants to score. Won't score. Hit a little ball. Hey, I want to score. Yeah, it's a little ball. So I come on in. Yeah, I come on in now. Talking about, come on in.
Furthur playing Gloria, which they do such killer covers. Whether it's Van Morrison or the Beatles. I mean, some of the best music has been the Beatle covers or the Bob Dylan covers. I mean, their catalog, Grateful Dead, Furthur, Dead and Company. I mean, all the different bands are amazing, but the covers are just so fucking cool too, right? I just love them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, well, I mean, we're not quite up to it yet, but the last song that I picked out for us to listen to includes a nifty little cover in there too. So, well, we're going to get to that in a couple of minutes, I think. But it's got a little treat hidden in there as well.
I love a band again that has a huge catalog and then still just loves the music enough to want to still do covers. I mean, there's something to say for just the posterity, the meaningfulness of all music. I mean, you're hearing, like, I'm thinking, Grateful Dead in the late 80s, and they've got 150 songs to pull from, and then they play Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and it's just amazing. So it's just one more reason they're so cool.
Yeah.
To me. I love hearing all that stuff. And I mean, again, Gloria, it's just all such good music. So let's talk about modern day. Well, this brings us to, we have had near misses. You and I have almost met in person. We're both in the Northeast, but we are still just, internet friends, phone friends, podcast friends now. I mean, it's a crazy, brave new world we're living in, right? My friend I've never met over here from the internet.
That's right. Right. And, I think you and I have had this conversation, and I've had it with other people too. I think that certainly I don't shy away, and I know you don't either, from social media. And I really feel that all different forms, well, maybe except for Snapchat for me, enhance my Deadhead life, my Grateful Dead enjoyment. And I mean, I think about it now. I was just picturing myself when we were listening to the music a few minutes ago, when I used to see the Dead at the Kaiser Auditorium in Oakland. And I would run into people, and one great friend named Danny, I ran into him. I had gone to college with him, and I don't even think I knew he was in the Bay Area. And I just ran into him at Kaiser. And flash forward to GD50, and we flew all the way out to California, and we were at Santa Clara, and wouldn't you know it, we had horrible seats way, way up in like the highest section, and we ran into the same wonderful friend Danny randomly. And I thought, with all of the social media and me trying to meet all these people, my phone not working, and trying to text everybody I was trying to meet, and here I am running into this same wonderful friend that I used to bump into at Kaiser, all those years ago. And without the help of my phone, which was no good that day. But other than that, my social media world, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram has led me to meet some of the greatest people, connected me with some fantastic bands, different festivals, different connections that, we didn't have that back in the day. And I think, it's really enhanced my Grateful Dead enjoyment, looking at pictures, hearing sound bites, downloading music.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is amazing, and it's not, it's only getting better. It's not a negative at all. I'm really happy about it. I'm fond of using it. And, I look forward to each new technology as it comes out. I don't go anywhere without my Bluetooth speaker and the whole bag of cords and wires to keep me connected and keep me charged up. I think it's, I think it's fantastic, and it's the Deadhead life today, in 2016, and I think it's very, very similar to the Deadhead life in, for me, let's say 1977. We're still the same people. We may use technology to get to that same point, but the real communication is still person to person. I may now text to get to meet that person, but once I meet that person, it's still the real deal. It's still, a a soul communicating with another soul, and it's the music is still really, really speaking to you once you put yourself in that place where the music is speaking to you. You just find out about it because you get a tweet or, or a message.
It's amazing. No, it's so amazing. And, it's interesting. I mean, my social media experience, I joined Facebook, I don't know, 9 years ago when it started, and I used it for, social purposes, reconnecting with, people I grew up with, and then, work friends and people in my community. And for a long time, for me personally, I've had this experience with other friends. It really wasn't positive because then I've heard a lot of negative things about, with parents and children. Like there's an element of who's doing what, and there's an isolation and a following what's happening with other people. Like, or that picture postcard perfect life of us on vacation and this and that. And I've always had kind of a bittersweet relationship with it where I've been compelled to look but reluctant to add. And in my real life as a mother and working and, what is the footprint that is my daily life. And since I started the podcast and started meeting people like yourself and honestly wanted to promote the podcast and get it out there, I've made a complete left turn on social media where I actually disengaged from all of the people that were on my personal profile because I wanted to switch it all to Strangers Stopping Strangers, for that reason alone. And and now everything you're saying it speaks to me. It's like a completely different experience because it's all in how you use it. So, I mean, had we been talking a year again, I'd be like, social media, but it's amazing when it's for a hobby, when it's sharing, when it's meeting people, where it's not, you know what I'm saying? Where it's not some, insincere postcard. It's you're sharing like the best parts of your life with people, and I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I can see that there is a downside as I'm, there is to probably everything, and probably all of us could give an example of that. But for the most part, especially because today we're talking about, the dead, and that is what your podcast is about. And I'm also really talking more today. We're using the dead as a jumping off point for more conversations. And I see that this is, really for me, it's a community. And you're part of, as a person, you're part of different communities, maybe. Your family is a community, your religion is a community, and hopefully these are positive communities. But some people don't have those as positive communities, and for some people, their Grateful Dead community is their family community or their religious community, and social media just makes it easier to find that, and and people tend to be their best self in that world. Not always, but and sometimes you find those people and you pick them out, but usually, and I love it.
No, I absolutely love it too, and it has given me. It's just been such a journey going through, again, an aspect where it was being used that I don't know if it was all positive, to something where it's just one upside after another. Again, the music, the pictures, the stories, the sharing, the what's happening, what's going on, because we're all bound through this common thing, which is being a deadhead and meeting each other and being part of it. And I just feel happier knowing the people that I've met. They've really been, they have been, hugely positive. So right. I totally agree. No, it's amazing. So now we're today. Now we're in 2016, and we just came off a killer summer tour, which right. I know you and I were both lucky enough to see some shows. And you selected a show that I missed, but you went to, and I love hearing it because it was just such a good show.
Right. Right. So I really think that, Dead and Company, I think there's a bomb. I think that they really just got it. They just got it going on, and they're sharp, and I'm thrilled that they're still just doing it right. I picked out, really, I could have picked out any song from any of the shows I went to, but one that really I felt took took it over the top was when I saw them at the Xfinity Center in Hartford on June 28th. And that was the version they played of The Wheel, which goes into a very reggae-sounding version of that Motown song Stay, which was done back in the 60s by a band called the Zodiacs. And it's really hot. So that's the version I picked out for us today, and I think people who are listening are just going to really get a kick out of that. Somebody said to me when we were listening, well, what do you think? Would Jerry have done this? And I said, well, no, okay, I don't think Jerry would have done this, but I think Jerry would have loved this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really cool. And when I was listening, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I loved it. And I think people who are listening will too.
Well, I'm excited to, I've heard it, but I'm excited to share it and listen to it again. And, we were talking in one of the little breaks when we were playing the music. So I'm going to do my best to be able to attach more music to the podcast. And I'm still figuring out my legs logistically, but what I can do is for anyone who is on my sign up that goes to the website, I send a letter out, which hopefully you're getting. It could go into spam. But on that letter, it's very easy for me to attach links. So for this podcast, I'm going to play the 3 songs that we're talking about. And then on the letter that says that there's a podcast up, I'm going to put a link to all 3 concerts. And it's just going to redirect you to the Grateful Dead archive link, because I know they're all up on that. And so, when you have a little more time or you want to hear some of the surrounding songs, go for it and listen to it, because I think Juliet's really painted a beautiful picture of, being in Maine and being out in Cooperstown and the whole fantastic experience that was Dead & Company. So all 3 of these links back to the archives are going to be on the email that people get out. And if you're not on the email, then go to Strangers Stopping Strangers and sign up for email. You will only get an email once a week telling you that there's a new podcast, or every other week if that's when it is. We don't send you anything that's not just, hey, check out the podcast. So maybe this will let people know. www.strangersstoppingstrangers.com. Sign up and you will get the, hey, there's a new podcast email out when there's a new podcast. So I will attach it so everyone can hear it. Because, the more music, the better, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Well, let's enjoy that, and then we'll come back and say goodbye. So enjoy this summer at Dead & Company.
try just a little bit more. Round, 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 round. Got to get back to where you belong. A little bit harder, just a little bit more. A little bit further than you've gone before. The wheel is turning, can't slow it down. You can't let go, and you can't hold on. You can't go back, and you can't stand still. If the thunder don't get you, little lightning. try just a little bit more? Won't you try just a little bit harder? But it's just a little bit more. Won't you try a little bit harder? Try just a little bit harder. Can't you try just a little bit more? A little bit A little harder. Won't you try just a little bit more? Little bit harder. Little bit more. A little bit harder. A little bit more. A little bit more.
So we are back from listening to Dead & Company, and this was in Hartford on June 28th, just this past summer, and I sure hope they'll be at Hartford again soon, because I'm like locked and loaded and ready to see as many shows as I can, and I think you are too, right, Juliet?
Oh, yeah. Yep. As a matter of fact, I think, aren't you and I going to connect when Bob Weir comes our way?
We are going to connect. I bought tickets for the Cap. I couldn't be more excited. A shout out to Liz, one of my very closest friends from California, is coming out that Friday, and we are going to spend the whole weekend in Westchester. So very excited about that. So that'll be Bobby's birthday show on the 16th. So, I'm super pumped up about that and just everything. Per your suggestion, I bought tickets to see Dark Star Orchestra. I've never seen them. That's going to be fun. And
yes. So yeah, just actually a shout out to all your listeners. Dark Star Orchestra is I guess probably the premier Grateful Dead tribute band, and if you haven't seen them, they are great. And people should just be supporting all of their local Grateful Dead bands and getting out and hearing local live music. And I know I certainly do whenever I get
100%. I had just jumped in. I mean, I went to go to, again, a shout out to Ron, who is awesome, and I got to meet in person. So amazing. I got to meet him and hear him play last Saturday at the Forever Grateful Festival. Brought my family, my kids. My kids were so cute. They wanted the people in Terrapin to sign the posters. Like, my son was all excited that, the people, the band were signing the posters. And, I mean, it's awesome. And, seeing Terrapin or seeing Stella Blues, playing with Melvin Seals at the Cap, just amazing shows.
Right, that was an amazing show. And, by the way, that's up, and you can listen to that. They have, that's all up on YouTube now, so you can hear that whenever you want to. So that was a really amazing show.
They all just sound so good, and they play with such heart, and they just sound so good. So to be able to go and listen and share it with your friends and your family on a regular basis, it's a treat. It was really fun bringing my family. I know we had talked about if I should bring, and it was such a kid-friendly place, and my daughter had the little flowers on her hair, and it's awesome, twirling around in her tie-dye dress, and super fun to get to have them and have, again, friends that wouldn't necessarily spend the money and make the priority to see a more formal concert. It's such a great way just to go spend the day, and everyone sounds so good, and they're having so much fun playing. So, yes, shout out to all those friends, all of the Northeastern bands that Juliet's friends with and I am meeting, and just so much fun. Good times. Well, thank you for joining and being a guest on Stranger Stopping Strangers.
Thank you for having me.
Have you on the show. This has been really fun to get to hear your story and details. I learned a lot about you that I didn't know, and it's just great to hear your stories. It makes me want to ask you a million more questions offline.
Okay. Okay. Well, you can, but I think for now let's let your people go. Haha.
Well, then let's let our people go. Absolutely. Let's let our people go.
Okay.
Very cool.
Right.
Well, you have a good weekend. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
In the world's 20 for two.